Woke. This word and many other political buzzwords such as sexist and racist in 2024 are used more than the word "the" nowadays, with everything seemingly broadcast as a political issue, whether that be through a complex social problem or even little things like the downfall of the North Melbourne Football Club. These words are used so frivolously. Yes, apparently the reason for the Kangaroos' demise is because of the woke leftist agenda. But that's the thing, words on either side of the political spectrum are meaningless buzzwords. Whether that be words like woke, socialist, communist, racist, left-wing, right-wing, these words mean nothing. And a perfect example of this is in the comment section of one of my video essays about the downfall of AFL commentary. I was literally called a sexist and that I was pandering to women in the same video. And now the sport of AFL is being called woke by one side or racist and sexist on the other. And today we are here to take a look at the title of this video. The AFL has gone woke, or has it? And guys, of course, if you do enjoy this video essay, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And of course, make sure to drop a comment down below about your thoughts on this video. But now, let's get into it. So if we're going to be taking a look at the AFL, and if it's gone woke, then we have to look at what is so-called woke about this. My God, this video may break my brain while trying to edit. The amount of times I'm going to be saying woke, I hate that bloody word. I may need to take some long service leave from my actual job after this edit, just to recover from the amount of times hearing this bloody stupid word. But anyway, I think the first place we should start is AFLW, because women's sport is a pretty contentious topic around the world. But we only saw the national competition of women's Aussie rules football introduced in 2017. And it started off with a bang, with the first official AFLW game being a lockout. But of course, at this time, AFLW games were free for attendance, so the numbers were inflated to an extent, but what it did show is there was an audience who were keen to see women's footy. And we saw in 2019 the biggest ever crowd at the time for a women's sporting match, with the 2019 AFLW Grand Final attracting over 53,000 people to the Adelaide Oval to see the Adelaide Crows smash Carlton. But it now seems that the novelty of going to an AFLW game has worn off, and with games now costing $15 per adult, there is a question for people to ask themselves that is the product worth spending money? And I think one of the big issues the AFLW has faced is the AFL itself for two reasons. One is the fact that they have dug themselves a massive hole by pushing the AFLW to expand much quicker than it needed to. In the space of 6 years, from 2017 to 2022, the AFLW has expanded the league from 8 clubs to 18, which spread the talent pool of players far too thin. And that combined with my second point, which is the dreadful fixturing of the AFLW being all over the place. Many AFLW games, like this one with the Bombers and the Dogs, are receiving massive criticism for the way that it was played, which is 100% warranted. And to help this women's game grow, we can't have games only getting 1 goal to halftime, and the Western Bulldogs not getting a goal in 3 games this season. No one is attracted to that, and for good reason. And this leads me to an outside of the AFL space issue, which is the outside noise, which is pushing away people from the AFLW as well. Because if you don't like the AFLW for whatever reason, you're sexist, you hate women, or you don't believe women should be playing the game. Now, there may be a few brain-dead individuals who actually think that, but I think most people get to a point at the end of the AFL season where they're just simply worn out of watching footy, or you may even just get to a point where you don't like the stand of the AFLW at the moment, which I think is completely fine. But I don't think we should just get rid of the AFLW. I hope it does continue to grow and develop and get a lot better. However, the AFLW should be able to be criticised, and when there is outside influence of others calling people stupid buzzwords like sexist is killing people off from watching this women's game. And that's not to say there isn't any type of sexism going around. I mean, when guys are saying that women don't belong in our game, that's not helping anyone, and I don't understand really the logic around that sort of thing. But I'm sure if I had a daughter down the track, I would love for her to at least have the option of playing AFL, because I think it's the greatest sport in the world. Now, on the money side of things, I wouldn't imagine that the AFLW is making anything for the AFL at the moment, but what it is doing is growing the game to a new audience, getting more women involved in the sport. Now, on the short term, the AFLW may be losing money for the AFL at the worst, but the long-term play is a plethora of options like more sponsorships and inevitably more money for the AFL, as well as probably the big target, which is more involvement in the sport. Because if you think about it, at the moment, the AFL is so secluded to just Australia, so there's not much growth they can make other than new men joining the game. So to grow it to basically 50% of the population is a great move for the AFL as a whole. But moving into a social issue that some people have in the AFL space, which is the Aboriginal community. Now, the Aboriginal people have brought so much to the game we know and love, which is only possible with some of the greatest players to grace the field, such as Nicky Winmar, Gavin Wanganeen, Cyril Rioli, Adam Goods, and other all-time greats. But we have seen some very complex issues that have faced the Aboriginal people in the AFL space in recent times. But for some reason, the biggest problem that people have with the AFL at the moment is the Welcome to Country ceremony. Now, of course, this isn't just an AFL issue, but former players such as Sam Newman have such a problem with the Welcome to Country ceremonies before games of footy, and I really don't understand why. I don't know if it's him trying to stay relevant and keeping himself as a talking point in the AFL space, but I think it's hilarious that a 50-plus-year-old man gets so upset by a few words. I mean, honestly, why do people get so upset by this? The game still starts at the exact same time, and it isn't hurting anyone, so it's such a brain-dead point to get so upset about. Now, I understand there are some Indigenous people who don't like the Welcome to Country ceremonies, because it's not like they're going to be getting that land back, which I think is a valid criticism, to be honest. But for some old person to get so upset about a couple of words before a game of AFL footy is just laughable. Like, it isn't hurting you, so if you're watching it on television, just turn it off, or if you're at the game, just don't listen to it. I don't think they would care about one person not listening to it. I mean, this is the same type of person who would start seething over a banana turning a bit brown. Oh my god, the banana has a couple of brown spots on it. I can't believe the woke leftist agenda has infiltrated the fruit market. It's called aging, bro, for f***'s sake. Why does everything have to be some sort of political stance or some political issue? We can't just celebrate the Aboriginal culture in the greatest country on earth without some absolute drop-dead old person having a sook about a couple of words that have nothing to do with you. I think most people should be able to sit through a Welcome to Country speech from an Aboriginal elder when they've given so much to our game. I mean, take away the players for the moment and just look at Sir Doug Nicholls' round that now goes for 2 weeks, which is such a great time for the AFL. Just peeling back all the great cultural stuff we get, just looking at the jumpers and the great designs that we see. I think so many people enjoy the new jumpers and the great designs for every AFL team getting involved. I see so many times going to the AFL, most people do have the Aboriginal jumpers on because they're new and exciting designs. So I'm not sitting here trying to say that you have to love the Welcome to Country speeches, but I think we can just all get through it without having to have a huge whinge about it. I think that's the biggest point to take away from it. Now, looking at the woke claims against the AFL on Indigenous issues, I look at the recent history with the Clarkson saga involving racism claims at the Hawthorn Footy Club during his tenure. Now, a brief rundown of this whole situation is in September of 2022, massive allegations of mistreatment of Aboriginal players during the time where trio of former Hawthorn coach Alistair Clarkson, former assistant coach in Chris Fagan, and former staffer in Jason Burt were brought to light. Now, if you want a bigger breakdown of this situation, then I will link an article down below for the investigation. However, that's not exactly what this video is about, but rather the buzzword debate. And when these allegations got into the public eye at the end of the 2022 season, Chris Fagan was the Brisbane Lions coach and Alistair Clarkson was appointed as the new senior coach of the North Melbourne Footy Club. And between that time and when the investigation concluded, at no time did the AFL hand down any suspected parties a suspension or even told them to take leave. The AFL let the investigation play out, and in the end the AFL decided to terminate the investigation after no findings were found. Now, I think the woke move would have been to immediately either suspend or even sack the parties involved in this investigation. Believe all victims, so to speak. But no, they were innocent until proven guilty, which is the correct way to go about things. But look, I'm not going to just sit here and praise the AFL for every single stance they have taken on social issues. In fact, I think the way the AFL go about AFL Pride Game and the LGBTQ community is a real sign of the AFL not going woke, but being a business in the Western world, trying to appear open-minded, but actually just doing it for publicity. So a little breakdown of the Pride Game itself. The first Pride Game we actually saw in 2015 in a pre-season game between the Swans and Fremantle at Drummoyne Oval. But the first official AFL Pride Game for premiership points was in 2016 with the Sydney Swans up against St Kilda. And since then, every single year the Swans and the Saints have played against each other in the Pride match. Now, I'm not saying that we don't need to have a Pride match or a Pride round. I mean, I do find it strange that the AFLW has a whole round, but the AFL only has one game. I don't know if they think that women are gayer for some reason, but I don't think the AFL trying to appear like they're welcoming to the LGBTQ community is doing anything. I think the majority of people are okay with gay people and wouldn't have an issue with a gay player in the AFL space. But recent research does show that 4% of Australian males identify as gay or bisexual. And of course, we have over 16,000 people who have played AFL over its history. And yet, in this long history of the sport in Australia, no one has ever felt comfortable enough to come out as gay. Now, by no means do I think a player has to come out and announce their sexual orientation to the public, but surely in the span of time that we've seen the AFL out in the public eye, we would have seen at least one player feel comfortable to at least come out and reveal themselves. I mean, there must be a reason as to why we haven't had an AFL player come out as gay. I mean, Christ, we even saw in the NRL a player come out as gay. So to some extent, I think it's a pretty simple conclusion to come to that there is an issue here. Now, to what level, I'm unsure, but I believe this shows the AFL pride game is 100% just a business decision. But on the media side of things, I don't think any players want to come out because they don't want to be put on display like some type of circus freak. I mean, if you think about it, do you think the AFL media would just let a player come out as gay? There is no way that would happen. They would put them in the spotlight every single chance they could get and say, look everyone, the AFL has a gay player. And the AFL would be trying to appeal to more advertisers in the game rather than what most people would think, which is, okay, good on you for coming out and feeling brave enough to say this. Now get back on the field and play some footy. That's really what I want to see here. And the solution to having players feeling comfortable enough to come out is not to just grandstand to the fans, trying to put up a front that you seem to care. How about you just leave us out of it and talk to the players and the clubs about this issue? Because clearly there is something going on here. I mean, look at the AFLW and the recent article about a player's relationship with a teammate. There was an interview between two Port Adelaide AFLW players and a relationship with a fellow teammate. And this story dives into their whole dating life and how they've had to fight stereotypes and other relationship problems while being in the public eye. But the fact that this is even news is why I think a lot of AFL players don't want to come out. An openly gay man couldn't simply just be out in the AFL space. Now, I know AFL players are like celebrities here in Australia, but most of them don't want to have their relationships in headlines. And I know for a fact that if a player did come out as gay, they would never have a chance to have a meaningful relationship without it being headlines. So to the AFL, stop posturing to the public that you are inclusive to the homosexual community, because the majority of us wouldn't give two flying if a gay guy was playing in the AFL. But clearly the players themselves don't trust that you will actually treat them as equals. Now, we did see 3 players receiving suspensions over the 2024 season, which I guess is a step in a good direction. I don't really know, but it is also hard to know if this is to try and start change and have players maybe feel more comfortable and more open about their sexuality, or if it's just the AFL trying to look a lot better amongst some advertisers, but only time will tell on that front. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't think the AFL has gone woke, or whatever these different buzzwords mean. I think these buzzwords or gotcha words are used so much these days where you can only be on two sides of the political spectrum. Being a so-called woke lefty, which can mean anything from you thinking that women should just be allowed to play AFL football, to you thinking that transgender females should actually be able to play AFLW. And on the other side of the spectrum, being called a right-wing person can mean anything from you thinking that the Giants players shouldn't have received any sanctions for their actions at a private function, to not wanting women to have any involvement with the AFL for the only reason that they are a woman. There's no nuance anymore. People put themselves in these echo chambers and ignore alternate views by dismissing them as woke leftist propaganda or alt-right nonsense, when everything is not so black and white. And I think some people fail to realise that they're simply a business who was trying to appeal to the biggest audience. The majority of the AFL supporters simply don't have a problem with these different social issues, or at the very least don't have a dog in the fight. Meaning they don't have contempt for these communities, or on the other side of the coin, don't feel the need to pander to them. Now, I personally believe that the push for every topic to have some sort of political stance in this current landscape is how much US politics plays in the world. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard the term political brain rot, where people will try to make anything a political argument on either side of their political beliefs. On one side, calling someone sexist just because a person criticizes a woman, or racist because they criticize someone of color, or on the other side of the coin, saying that the reason that the Swans lost 4 grand finals in the last 10 years is because of wokeness. And unfortunately, political brain rot is infiltrating everything in the world, and it's not going to stop anytime soon, because the media around the globe know that these types of stories and borderline propaganda get the most amount of clicks and attention. And now, because everything has to have some sort of political meaning, we have to deal with this in the AFL space. And it is unfortunate, but it's the world we live in. But moving on to the business side of things for the AFL, I'm telling you right now, if 95% of the AFL supporter base were the KKK members who hated people of colour, then I'm sure the AFL would try and capitalise on that market. Same thing goes for big companies around the globe. Every Pride Month, we see a bunch of companies change their logos on social media to rainbow to support the LGBTQ community. But what some of you may not know is the fact that these same companies don't change their stance on social media in countries where it's not okay to be gay or a part of the LGBTQ community. So that's what I'm really trying to say to round up this video. The AFL is a business. It isn't some conspiratorial front for the alt-left or alt-right of politics. It's a massive business that wants to try and make the most amount of money possible. And at the end of the day, the best way to grow the game, especially a sport like the AFL, where it's all but secluded to Australia, is to appeal to the biggest audience. Cast the widest net, so to speak. And appealing to the widest audience is to be inclusive to everyone, and it appears it's been working. The AFL is the most popular it has ever been, with crowd numbers hitting record highs this year, and the game is continuing to grow at a younger level, as well as participation numbers hitting new heights. Now, of course, there are other factors of the game growing, other than just the AFL appealing to communities through supporting social issues. But when people say the game is dying, that simply isn't the case. If anything, the game is the biggest it's ever been. And also on a business side of things, the AFL is thriving. And I, for one, love to see the AFL thriving in all facets, as I think Australia's game is one of the best sports around the globe. And if everyone can play this great game, well, I honestly don't see a problem with that one little bit. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Now, I know I understand that I may get some hate from either side of politics for this video, but I think it is actually an interesting topic. The political side of things has hit sport, and I think it's something that could be talked about a little bit more without taking either side of the political spectrum. But of course, guys, make sure to let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section. I'd really like to see your feedback on this type of video. Of course, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and share it to a mate if you think they would be interested in this sort of video as well. And if you would like to show a little bit of extra support, we do have channel membership enabled on the channel. So if you would like a bunch of exclusive perks, including early access to videos and the Boundary Riders podcast, then click the link down below marked channel membership. But again, guys, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and we'll catch you all in the next one.